They found him in pieces, the man who had ruled Delhi like a demon for 35 days, a slave turned warlord, a man so feared, so hated, that even the guards he commanded chose to murder him in his sleep. But this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's a story about how power rots from the inside. He wasn't born royal, he was bought for 1,000 dinars, but in the final days of a collapsing empire, Malik Kafur was the most dangerous man alive. He blinded princes, burned alliances, and according to legend, he had a sultan skinned alive. Whether the story's true or not doesn't matter. People believed it, and in history sometimes the myth is more terrifying than the truth. The year is 1316. The Delhi Sultanate, once the jewel of medieval India, is bleeding from within. A dynasty that conquered kingdoms now devours its own children. At the center of this carnage stands a man with no past, no family, no blood claim to power, only ambition, and the bodies he's willing to climb over to reach the throne. This is Malik Kafur, the 1,000-dinar slave, the boy who was sold like cattle and rose to command armies, the trusted general who betrayed his master, the outsider who seized an empire and held it for exactly 35 days before his own men tore him apart. But how does a slave become a king? How does loyalty become murder? And what happens when absolute power falls into the hands of someone who has absolutely nothing to lose? You're about to witness the darkest political coup in medieval history, one that didn't just destroy a dynasty, it shattered the very idea that power has rules. The Gujarat heat is merciless in 1299. Dust swirls through burning villages as Alauddin Khalji's army carves through the kingdom like a blade through silk. Among the captives, chained, terrified, herded like animals toward an uncertain fate, walks a boy who will one day make emperors tremble. He is perhaps 16. Beautiful in the way that catches the eye of slavers and sultans alike. His skin unmarked by the brutal labor that defines most captives. There's an intelligence in his dark eyes that suggests he understands exactly what's happening to him, and more importantly, that he's already planning his survival. The slave markets of Delhi reek of fear and commerce. Bodies are prodded, inspected, valued like grain or livestock. But this Hindu boy from Gujarat commands attention. 1,000 dinars, an astronomical sum that could buy a small army. The buyer, Sultan Alauddin Khalji himself, ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, conqueror of kingdoms, and a man who collects beautiful, intelligent things. The boy is given a name to match his price, Malik Kafur, the 1,000-dinar slave. But names are just the beginning of transformation. In the sprawling courtyards of the Red Fort, Kafur learns that survival isn't about strength, it's about becoming indispensable. He tends horses with a dedication that borders on obsession. He memorizes the routines of generals, the weaknesses of courtiers, the rhythm of power itself. Most slaves dream of freedom. Kafur dreams of control. Within months, he's promoted from stable hand to personal servant. The Sultan notices him, not just his beauty but his mind. Kafur speaks when spoken to, but his silence holds weight. He remembers everything, forgets nothing, and when Alauddin asks for counsel, Kafur's advice carries the cold precision of someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain. The court whispers, of course. They always do. A slave so close to power. A Hindu boy in the inner circle of a Muslim sultan. The relationship defies tradition, challenges hierarchy, threatens the natural order. But Alauddin doesn't care about whispers. He cares about results. And Kafur delivers results written in blood and gold. A 3003. The Mongols sweep down from the north like a plague of iron and death. While other generals panic, Kafur volunteers to lead the cavalry charge. He's never commanded more than a dozen men, but he studies battle like scripture. The Mongol horde crashes against his disciplined formations and breaks like waves on stone. Kafur returns to Delhi with enemy heads and a reputation that silences the whispers temporarily. 3008. The Deccan campaigns begin. Southern India beckons with its temple treasures and weak kingdoms. Kafur convinces the Sultan to let him lead the expedition. What follows is a masterclass in conquest. The Hoysala kingdom falls, the Pandyan dynasty crumbles, cities surrender at the mere mention of his name. But it's not just the military victories that make Kafur invaluable, it's the treasure. Wagon trains stretch for miles, loaded with gold, silver, precious stones, war elephants, and exotic birds. The Delhi treasury overflows. The Sultan grows rich beyond the dreams of ancient pharaohs, and with each success, Kafur moves closer to the throne. The other nobles watch this rise with growing alarm. This is not how power works. Slaves don't command armies. Outsiders don't counsel sultans. Hindus don't shape Muslim policy. But Kafur has something none of them possess, the Sultan's complete trust. Aladdin sees in him what every ruler dreams of, a man with no family to favor, no bloodline to protect, no ambition beyond service. It's the greatest miscalculation in the history of the Delhi Sultanate, because in the darkest corners of Kafur's mind, a different vision is taking shape, not service, not loyalty, but succession. The slave is learning that the only difference between a servant and a king is who dies first. As 1315 draws to a close, Sultan Aladdin Khalji falls ill. The conquests have taken their toll. His body weakens, his mind wanders, his grip on power loosens day by day. The court holds its breath, waiting to see who will inherit an empire. But Kafur isn't waiting. He's not even hoping. He's planning. Power is a disease, and by 1316 Sultan Aladdin Khalji is dying of it. The once mighty conqueror lies fevered in his chambers, his body racked with pain, his mind clouded by suspicion. The empire he built through blood and iron is fracturing at the edges. Governors rebel, nobles scheme, and in the suffocating heat of the Red Fort, everyone waits for the inevitable. Everyone except Malik Kafur. He doesn't wait, he acts. The first move is subtle, almost invisible. Letters begin appearing in the Sultan's private chambers, correspondence that speaks of treachery, of plots against the crown, of trusted generals meeting in secret. The handwriting looks authentic, the seals appear genuine, but the words are poison, carefully crafted to feed the Sultan's growing paranoia. Kafur presents each letter with the perfect mixture of loyalty and concern. "My Sultan," he whispers, "I discovered this hidden in General Malik Naib's quarters. I bring it to you, though it pains my heart." The Sultan's fevered mind cannot distinguish between truth and manipulation. Each letter confirms his worst fears. Each betrayal feels real because fear makes everything real. And Kafur, faithful, devoted Kafur, is the only one he can trust. The executions begin with General Malik Naib, the Sultan's most loyal commander. Dragged from his home at dawn, he dies proclaiming his innocence. His family is scattered to the winds. His supporters disappear into dungeons or unmarked graves. With each death, Kafur's influence grows stronger. The Sultan becomes more isolated, more dependent, more completely under the control of the man who saved him from traitors that exist only in forged letters. But the real targets aren't the generals, they're the princes. Prince Khizr Khan should be celebrating. As the Sultan's eldest son, he's the rightful heir to the throne. He's proven himself in battle, earned the respect of nobles, and commanded armies with distinction. By every law of succession, the empire should be his. Kafur has other plans. The campaign begins with whispers. Prince Khizr, they say, grows impatient for power. He speaks too freely about his father's illness. He meets too often with ambitious nobles. He questions decisions that come from the throne, or more precisely, from Kafur's lips to the Sultan's ear. Then come the fabricated reports. Spies claim to have overheard the prince discussing rebellion. Servants swear they've seen secret messages. Guards report strange meetings in the dead of night. Each lie builds upon the last until the Sultan can no longer tell truth from fiction. The confrontation is inevitable. Prince Khizr is summoned to the throne room, where his father's hollow eyes burn with fever and suspicion. The accusations pour forth like a flood: betrayal, treachery, ungrateful ambition. The prince's denials sound like confirmations. His confusion reads as guilt. Kafur stands beside the throne, silent and sympathetic, the perfect counselor grieving for his master's pain. The sentence is exile. Prince Khizr is stripped of his titles, his lands, his future. He's sent to Gwalior Fortress, that massive stone prison rising from the earth like a monument to political failure. But exile isn't enough, not for Kafur, because dead men can't reclaim thrones. The order comes weeks later, written in the Sultan's own trembling hand, but whispered into his ear by Kafur: "Let justice be complete." In the darkness of Gwalior Fortress, guards enter the prince's cell carrying iron rods heated white-hot in the prison forges. Prince Khizr Khan, rightful heir to the Delhi Sultanate, son of emperors, commander of armies, screams as the metal burns through his eyes. The sound echoes through the stone corridors like the death cry of a dynasty. His younger brother suffers the same fate days later. Hot iron, darkness forever. Another potential claimant eliminated with the surgical precision of a master manipulator. Sultan Aladdin dies in January 1316, his heart finally giving out under the weight of grief and poison, though whether the poison came from illness or Kafur's hand remains one of history's darker mysteries. On his deathbed, he signs a final will naming his youngest son, 6-year-old Shihabuddin Omar, as his successor. The will is a forgery, the child is a puppet, and Kafur is the hand that makes him dance. The coronation is a mockery wrapped in ceremony. A boy too young to understand power sits on a throne too big for his body, while Kafur stands behind him, speaking in his name, ruling in his shadow. But even this charade isn't enough for the 1,000-dinar slave. He needs legitimacy. He needs unshakable control, so he marries the boy's mother. The Sultana, widow of Aladdin, mother of the puppet king, becomes Kafur's wife in a ceremony that breaks every tradition of Islamic succession. A slave marrying into the royal bloodline, a Hindu commanding a Muslim empire, an outsider becoming the ultimate insider through marriage, murder, and magnificent deception. Now he is stepfather to the Sultan, husband to the royal widow, commander of all armies, master of the treasury. Kafur has climbed from slave to the peak of absolute power in less than 2 decades, leaving a trail of bodies and broken dynasties in his wake. The court falls silent, the nobles submit, the city holds its breath, but in the shadows one prince remains, one son of Aladdin, who escaped the blindness, the poison, the purges. Mubarak Khan lives in hiding, gathering supporters, planning revenge, and when Kafur finally sends assassins to finish what should have been completed long ago, the prince is ready. The hunters become the hunted, and the slave who made himself king is about to learn that power, stolen, can be stolen again. The streets of Delhi whisper a story too terrible for daylight. They say a prince was flayed alive, skinned like an animal in the deepest dungeons of the Red Fort, while Malik Kafur watched, unmoved as stone. They say the screams lasted 3 days. They say the skin was displayed as a warning to anyone who dared challenge the 1,000-dinar slave. Truth or legend, it doesn't matter. The people believe it, and belief becomes reality when it's soaked in enough blood. The markets that once buzzed with commerce now echo with nervous murmurs. Merchants pack their goods at the first sign of trouble. Noble families flee to distant provinces. Even the hardened soldiers who patrol the streets move with the careful steps of men walking through a graveyard. This is Delhi in 1316, an empire ruled by fear, commanded by a man with no soul and no limits. Kafur moves through his palace like a ghost haunting his own grave. The power he fought so desperately to claim has become a prison of paranoia. Every shadow could hide an assassin. Every servant might be a spy. Every smile masks potential betrayal. The boy who learned to survive by reading faces now sees death in every expression. But it's not the nobles who terrify him. It's his own guards. The Pike's elite warriors bound by oath to protect the throne stand watch with hands that no longer rest easy on their sword hilts. These are men who have served sultans and princes, who have sworn blood oaths to defend the dynasty. Now they guard a slave who murdered their true masters. The contradiction poisons every moment of their service. Kafur feels their eyes on him, cold, calculating, waiting. In the deepest chambers of the Red Fort, another conversation is taking place. Prince Mubarak Khan, the last surviving son of Aladdin, speaks to men whose loyalty was bought with gold but whose conscience still remembers honor. A slave who kills his master, he whispers, will eventually kill you too. The words hang in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. These guards have seen what Kafur does to inconvenient people. They've witnessed the blindings, the poisonings, the disappearances. They know that in his paranoid mind, today's protector becomes tomorrow's threat. Mubarak Khan reaches into his robes and produces a necklace, not gold or silver but something more valuable, a symbol, a promise, a key to redemption. Restore the rightful dynasty, he says, and history will remember you as heroes, not as the slaves of a slave. The guards exchange glances. Silent communication passes between men who have shared battlefields and blood. They think of the princes they failed to protect, the sultans they couldn't save, the oaths they've been forced to break. That night, the Red Fort grows darker than usual. Kafur lies in his chamber, the same room where Sultan Aladdin once slept, surrounded by the treasures of conquest. The irony is perfect. The slave sleeps in his master's bed, dreams in his master's dreams, but cannot escape his master's fate. The door opens without sound. Shadows move like whispers across the marble floor. The Pikes enter with drawn blades, their faces hidden by darkness, but their purpose clear as moonlight. Kafur wakes to steel pressed against his throat. For a moment, perhaps the first moment in years, he looks genuinely surprised. The master manipulator, outmaneuvered. The puppet master, with his strings cut. The man who thought he had eliminated every threat, facing the one enemy he never saw coming, his own protectors. You should have remained a slave, one of them whispers. The blades fall like rain. Again and again, the 1,000-dinar slave dies as he lived, surrounded by violence, destroyed by the very power he craved. His blood pools on marble floors that once reflected the glory of legitimate sultans. When dawn breaks over Delhi, the guards speak of what they found, but never of what they did. The official story writes itself. Malik Kafur, overcome by guilt and madness, took his own life. The details remain buried with the bodies he created. But in the palace corridors, everyone knows the truth. The slave king died like a slave, at the mercy of men who held his life in their hands. They left his body to rot in silence. Malik Kafur, conqueror of kingdoms, collector of treasures, the slave who seized an empire, lies forgotten in the chamber where he dreamed of eternal power. No funeral rites, no mourning period, no monuments to mark his passing. Even death refuses to dignify his ambition. Prince Mubarak Khan enters the Red Fort not as a conqueror, but as a rightful heir reclaiming stolen birthright. The puppet child Sultan is swept aside like debris after a storm. The forged documents burn. The illegitimate marriages dissolve. The natural order, it seems, has been restored, but power is a poison that infects everyone it touches. Mubarak Khan's first act as Sultan should be mercy. Instead, it's murder. His younger brother, innocent of any crime except royal blood, is dragged to the same dungeons where their older brothers died. The same hot irons, the same screams, the same permanent darkness. "I will not share my father's weakness," the new Sultan declares, his voice echoing in chambers still stained with Kafur's blood. No rivals, no threats, no mercy. The guards who helped him claim the throne, the same men who murdered Kafur in the name of justice, line up expecting rewards. Gold, lands, titles, recognition for their heroic deed. They receive steel instead. One by one, the conspirators are executed. The very men who restored the dynasty are eliminated as threats to its security. Their families scatter. Their names vanish from records. Their heroism becomes their death sentence. The logic is brutal but perfect. Men who can kill one ruler can kill another. Loyalty purchased with blood can be purchased again. The only safe guardian is a dead guardian. But this is just the beginning of the collapse. The empire that Alauddin Khilji built through conquest dies through paranoia. Provincial governors, witnessing the bloodbath in Delhi, declare independence rather than risk imperial attention. Trade routes close. Tax collection crumbles. The military fractures into competing factions. Within months, the mighty Delhi Sultanate, once master of half the Indian subcontinent, controls little beyond the walls of its own capital, and even there, rebellion simmers in every shadow. Mubarak Khan rules for 4 years before his own nobles grow tired of his tyranny. His death comes not in battle or through political maneuvering, but in the most mundane way possible, a hunting accident that nobody bothers to investigate too closely. Some deaths are simply convenient. The Khalji dynasty ends not with conquest, but with exhaustion. The bloodline that produced great sultans peters out in a series of weak rulers and violent successions. By 1320, 4 years after Kafur's death, a new dynasty claims the throne. The old royal family becomes a footnote in history, remembered more for their destruction than their achievements. And Malik Kafur, he becomes something darker than a footnote. He becomes a legend of power corrupted, of ambition without limits, of what happens when someone with nothing to lose gains everything to destroy. The story of the flayed prince spreads across medieval India like wildfire. Each telling adds new horrors, new details, new reasons to whisper his name in fear. Merchants tell it to warn against trusting strangers. Mothers recite it to teach children about the dangers of unchecked ambition. Historians record it as proof that divine justice eventually finds even the most cunning sinners. Whether the prince was actually skinned alive becomes irrelevant. The story serves a deeper truth, that some men are so hungry for power that they will devour everything around them, including themselves. In the end, Malik Kafur achieved something no legitimate ruler could: immortality through infamy. Kings are forgotten, dynasties fade. But monsters live forever in the stories we tell to explain why good people suffer and evil men sometimes win. His empire lasted 35 days. His legend will last forever. They said he was just a slave, but in 35 days Malik Kafur rewrote the story of an empire. Not in ink, in blood. He proved that birth means nothing when ambition means everything. That loyalty is just another weapon waiting to be turned against its target. That the distance between servant and master is measured not in bloodlines or birthright, but in bodies and betrayal. The 1,000-dinar slave rose higher than any outsider in the history of medieval India. He commanded armies that had conquered kingdoms. He married into dynasties that had ruled for generations. He held power that sultans had died to claim. And then he learned the final lesson that every tyrant must face. The same ruthlessness that lifts you to the throne will eventually drag you to the grave. Today, tourists walk through the ruins of the Red Fort in Delhi, marveling at the architectural grandeur of the Khalji dynasty. But they don't know about the chambers where princes screamed in darkness. They don't hear the whispers that still echo in the stone corridors. They don't feel the weight of secrets that these walls have absorbed like blood into sand. Malik Kafur wanted to be remembered as a king. Instead, he's remembered as a warning that sometimes the most dangerous person in any room is the one who has nothing left to lose. In the end, perhaps that's the most fitting monument to the slave who dreamed of empire. Not a tomb or a statue, but a story that parents still tell their children when they want to explain why power without conscience leads only to destruction. They found him in pieces, and perhaps that's exactly how a man who spent his life breaking others should be found, broken, forgotten, and torn apart by the very violence he used to climb so high. The throne he died for outlasted him by centuries. The dynasty he destroyed barely outlasted him by years. But the fear he created, the lessons he taught, the warning he became, that lives forever.